Can history have more than one interpretation? The answer is yes. Different historians often study the same events but reach different conclusions because they follow different ideologies and viewpoints. These different approaches are often known as ideological frameworks. In this lesson, we will learn about the various ideological frameworks in Indian historiography and understand how they influence the writing and interpretation of history. So let's begin with Standard 10 History, Chapter 2, Historiography, Indian Tradition, Subtopic 2.2, Indian Historiography, Various Ideological Frameworks. Colonial Historiography. Now the writings of the earlier British scholars who studied and wrote about Indian history reflected prejudice towards the Indian culture, as their writings justified the British colonial rule. Such kind of a record is called colonial historiography. For example, the 5 volumes of Cambridge History of India published during the year 1922 to 1937 are distinct examples of colonial historiography. Orientalist historiography. Among other historians, many European scholars felt curious about civilizations and countries of the East. Some of those scholars felt admiration and respect for them. These scholars were known as Orientalists. The Orientalists studied the similarities between Sanskrit and some of the European languages. They focused more on Vedic tradition and Sanskrit literature. Their studies resulted into formulating the notion of an ancient language that could be the mother of all Indo-European languages. In the year 1784, Sir William Jones founded the Asiatic Society in Kolkata. It opened the doors for research in ancient literature and history. Among the Orientalist scholars, Friedrich Max Müller deserves a special mention. In his opinion, Sanskrit was the most ancient language of the Indo-European languages. He was deeply interested in Sanskrit literature. He first translated the Sanskrit text of Hitopadesh in German language. He was the editor of 50 volumes of the sacred books of the East. He also compiled the Rig Veda, which has been published in 6 volumes. He translated the Rig Veda in German. It was then when Edward Said, a scholar, re-examined the writings of Orientalist scholars and pointed out that some of their studies supported the British Empire's interests. Their writings sometimes portrayed India and other eastern countries as backward, making foreign rule appear necessary. In this way, the Orientalist scholars wrote Indian history with imperialistic interests. Nationalistic historiography. Now these are the Indian historians who studied under the British educational system. The writings of such historians show an inclination to restore the pride in the ancient glory of India and the self-esteem of the Indian readers. That is why their writings are known as nationalistic historiography. The nationalistic historians try to seek the golden era of Indian history. They are at times blamed for ignoring the critical analysis of historical truth. Rajwade is well known for his writings in Marathi on various subjects like history, linguistics, etymology, grammar, etc. He was of the firm opinion that we should write our own history. He compiled and edited 22 volumes of Marathyancha Itihasachi Sadhane. He wrote very scholarly prefaces to each of the 22 volumes. He stated that history is the all-inclusive image of the past societies. It does not include only the stories of political images, conspiracies, and wars for seizing power. He insisted that history should be written only using authentic documentary source. The Indian War of Independence 1857, written by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, is of great importance. The nationalistic historiography helped in the triggering of the independence movement of the Indian people against the British. It provided a momentum to the writing of regional histories too. As a result, the attention of historians was drawn to the geographic conditions and history of South Indian regions. Historiography in the post-independence era. The historiography of this era has been influenced mainly by three ideological schools: the Marxist history, the subaltern history, and the feminist history. Scholars of this era began to feel the need of writing histories of various communities, sciences, economic systems, political ideologies, and cultural aspects. Marxist history. The concern for the means of production, modes of production, and the industrial relations were at the center in the writings of Marxist historians. Accordingly, to analyze the impact of every social event of significance has remained the basic theme of Marxist historiography. The Marxist historians in India studied the transition within the caste system. Among the notable Indian historians who adopted Marxist ideological frameworks, scholars like Damodar Dharmanand Kosambi, Comrade Shripad Amrut Dange, Ram Sharan Sharma, Comrade Sharad Patil have contributed notably. Comrade Dange was one of the founder members of the Indian Communist Party. He also wrote the book Primitive Communism to Slavery, which represents Marxist historiography. Subaltern history. The seeds of subaltern history are found in the Marxist historiography. The role of the Italian historian Antonio Gramsci is very important in developing the idea that history should be written starting from the bottommost ranks of people in the society. In fact, subaltern means bottommost ranks. Folklore has been considered a very important source of writing subaltern histories. Ranjit Guha, an Indian historian, played a major role in establishing subaltern history as an important academic school of historiography. However, we may point out that much before the onset of subaltern ideology, similar thoughts were expressed by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Mahatma Phule unfolded the history of the Shudra communities in his book Gulamgiri. He drew attention to the exploitation of women, Shudras and Ati-Shudras done under the name of religion. The terms Shudra and Ati-Shudra indicate the bottommost ranks in the caste system. The role of the people belonging to Dalit caste is very significant in the shaping of various cultural and political aspects of India. However, their role was not duly acknowledged in the colonial and nationalistic historiography. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar kept focusing on this fact consistently and wrote about it. Two of his books, Who Were the Shudras and The Untouchables, may be cited as examples of history of the subaltern type. Feminist history. Over a significant period of time, mainly male scholars were involved in the writing of Indian history. As a result, the role of the achievements of women in history remained neglected. To highlight this fact was a major task faced by the feminist historians. Also, it was important to study and compile the historical writings of women. It also was necessary to rethink of women's position in history. Among women authors, Writing about women in the 19th century CE, Tarabai Shinde was the foremost one. She wrote attacking the male-dominated social system and the caste system. Her book, Stree Purush Tulna, published in the year 1882, is acknowledged as the first feminist book in India. In the year 1888, the book written by Pandita Rababai was published, entitled as The High Caste Hindu Woman. Feminist literature of the post-independence era concentrated on the issues like employment of women, treatment meted out to them at their workplace, their right to political equality, etc. Among the recently published feminist literature, Meera Kosambi's book, Crossing Thresholds, Feminist Essays in Social History, is of importance. It contains essays on the life stories of women like Pandita Ramabai and Dr. Rukmabai, the first practicing lady doctor of India. In this way, it is evident that the Indian historiography has been greatly influenced by the social and political movements. It seems that some part of the Indian historiography was also developed outside the influence of these movements. With this, we come to the end of such a knowledge-filled chapter. If you found this video helpful, then give it a like, share it with your friends and subscribe for more such videos. This was all for now. Thank you and have a nice day.